Senor Guardiola first introduced the role to modern football in his stint with Bayern München, where he had legendary Lahm and average Alaba invert. Obviously, Lahm being the perfect player for the role with his insane passing range and tenacity in the tackle, but he did have a lack of pace, so suited him in the middle. He had to be the poster boy for the video. Yeah, I mean, the benefits and the reasons for teams using the role is mostly centered around numerical superiority, which makes your build-up more effective and having more players centrally to guard against counter-attack. Throughout all these clips, I'll be using Hakimi and Mendes in online seasons. They don't have plus or even a plus in the role, so they're doing all of this lovely movement that you'll see just off ability. If anyone's sort of worrying about needing a plus or a plus, you don't. I guess firstly we'll sort of touch on how they line up. Building out from the back, maybe from like a goal kick, something like that. With counter, which will sort of force them into position quicker, they will sit quite nicely just in between the attackers and the opponent's wingers. So they'll be in such a nice spot for you to do a little bounce pass, maybe work it to the midfielder, bounce it back to them. And from then, you can just really be creative with it. So you can do like 1-2 passes with them, trigger them forwards, and I just find they're a lot more accessible there than if you had a normal fullback where it's quite easy for the opponent to then cut that pass out. Whereas if they're inside, you know, I'll touch on it later with the benefits, but they're a lot closer basically for short passes and things. So as you work up the pitch, now I've got one of my DM roles on roaming, so maybe it slightly alters the positions the falsebacks will be taking up, but I don't think massively. So they'll be inside the block, literally playing as like two defensive midfielders. So as you work up the pitch, they will stay central and as a defensive midfielders rather than centre mids, because you can have defending and balance. They won't usually try to make runs forwards, and they will be very central and sort of tucked in, which is good because when you get to the edge of the box, you'll see they will be right there to help you recycle the ball. And then you can do one of the tricks I love to do is to get it to one, or even as you're passing across to him, you can sort of trigger one of the falsebacks to make a run, and then you can disguise the pass in and then find them with it, or you know, get it to them, trigger a little bounce pass and do like a 1-2 with them straight away. It's that fast passing on the edge of the box that really catches opponents out lots of the time. So yeah, they'll be central on the edge of the box for recycling. They won't try and do too much, to be honest. They'll just be there to guard against the counter-attack. So yeah, I suppose we'll go with the fun things first. With the instruction of Falseback, they overload the midfield. Now this is really good because I like to play lots of short passes, so even with the build-up style on counter, I'm getting the runs forwards, but I'm still getting lots of players coming short, or whether they're coming or just naturally in position that they're shorter and closer. It allows for lots of tiki-taka plays, and you'll see I'm not having to try too hard, you know. I'm not calling people short all the time. They're just naturally there for me to pop it into, pop it off, and do a little 1-2, a little run, a little back heels and cheeky flicks all over the place. Like it's really good. It's really easy. It helps me a lot building out from the back. I really struggle with the four defenders just flat out on the pitch. I find it so easy to mark. Maybe you guys can tell me in terms of trying to defend someone that has that. I feel like it's easy to play against because you can funnel them down the one side, and then obviously use the pitch as another defender. Whereas if you're in the middle, you've got all the creativity. You know, you can come out the block, you can reset. Yeah, so many short passes. Offensively, like when you're just around the box, they do provide a nice 1-2 pass option when recycling. So you can go from left to right, you know, sort of horseshoe like, but we're inside the block, so we've maybe come out wide and we're looking to go back centrally, where ordinarily you'd have your centre mids or your DMs just sat there. This would, or in my team, it will be the two falsebacks will be there. Occasionally I'll have the roaming DM will be there if that's where he chooses to be with this role. I've covered it, so if you want to watch it, the video's out on my channel, but he will be wherever he wants to be basically. So He could possibly be there. And you can get it into them, then quickly do a 1-2 and burst through the middle. You will see in some of these clips as well, with counter on, occasionally, even on defensive, which is like the DM version of it rather than the centre mid version, they will still make runs through the middle, which they are like penetrating, really strong runs through the middle, and where you've got, you know, maybe like a winger wide, the fullback naturally goes over to cover that, and they can just get into the middle so easily and get nice easy goals. So they do actually find themselves in goal scoring opportunities quite a lot. So, you know, where I've got Hakimi and Mendes, it's great because they can finish those off. So, you know, if you still play Ultimate Team or whatever you play, maybe try and find someone that's more of a ball player, a centre mid, a winger turned wing back, I guess. Just maybe not like a centre back moving in there. I've not found them to be out of position as much as the inverted wing back. You can have it on build up and attack, I think it is. They just seem to sit way too high, and also I don't find their runs to be good at all. They're not very helpful in build up, and in the final third they just sit way too high, and they're not really a pass option. And due to that, they seem to be out of position a lot. I don't find that with the Falsebacks at all. Another key thing, it sort of relates to the short passing and having like that central overload. I find that sometimes if you're trying to break down a block and maybe a guy's like holding on to his DM like people like to do, where sometimes if your team's really spread across the pitch, if you're thinking like you're trying to horseshoe and trying to create that option, by the time you pass maybe to one centre mid, then back to the other, or, you know, like to a fullback that's just sat, because like people like to just keep them on defensive and sit in there. Once you've made it, or, you know, pass it out to your fullback and you're trying to bring it back centrally, they're already marking that pass. Like, it's so easy and so predictable, where if you've got, like I've got the roaming centre mid, DM, sorry, and the two falsebacks in there, you can quickly fire it across. So, you know, with like the driven pass, so you could, you know, do a little back flick, maybe like driven it across to someone, lay it off first time possibly, and then you've created that gap really easily because it's like short, intricate, fast passes, and that's really hard to track. And then you can, you know, fire it into one of your forward players. At the moment, I'm really enjoying running my striker on false 9 and my cam on balanced, so they both sort of hover just behind the DMs, but just in front of the centre backs. So I've talked previously, I think, in a video where I said, you know, you must have striker on advanced forward and attack, and I think for scoring goals, yeah, but for general play and build up, this is so much better because it lets you fire it into them and they can lay it back off to your false backs running through, do little 1-2 passes, and yeah, it's so much nicer. So I think for sort of breaking people down in a lower block, it's really handy to have the false backs in there. And yeah, with it being sort of a third man run where you're passing, then you maybe do a 1-2 and the guys arriving in the area, I find it a lot more helpful than just having like a wing back, or, you know, even attacking fullbacks like back in the day. Because on old FIFAs I tried to do inverted, and for you guys that have played old FIFAs, not, you know, not old, but like even FIFA 23, you couldn't actually invert. Like, you'd put the setting on, but they didn't do it. And occasionally they would. I think, if I remember rightly, you'd have to tell your centre mids basically to completely vacate that area. So your centre mids would effectively have to play as wingers for you to get your fullbacks to come centrally at all, which is just weird. I suppose in a sense you do with this, like if you have two actual DMs, they won't play as DMs, but you can have one in there and the two fullbacks and it works fine. So yeah, don't worry about that. But if you are having two DMs in your formation, you will need to have one on centre half, box crusher, or wide half. Box crusher allows, I think it's one fullback, falseback in there, and the other, they're a little bit wider. So if you want both of them really in that block nice and tight, you will have to have one on wide back, half back, whatever it's called. I haven't got the screen in front of me. Wide, half, and slash or centre half. Anyway, they provide the third man running straight through the middle, which is really hard to stop and track, especially if you're playing nice fast football and, you know, adding a few tricks in there or whatnot. Really hard to track. So those are the attacking benefits of using it. Defensively, they sprint back. Well, if you lose possession, the AI sprints it back really fast. I think it's because they are tethered to the defensive line, obviously, because they're defenders. So naturally, it really, like, the AI really drags them back. Whereas if you've got like a centre mid or a DM, they naturally hover a bit, you know, ahead of that defensive line. So the AI or the computer doesn't bring them back as much, as aggressively, as fast. So I find that I'm constantly like nicking balls off the opponents with the falsebacks just coming back, like even if I'm not controlling them, because they just come back centrally, which is another thing. They come back centrally. So if people are trying to force passes through to their strikers like people do, or cams, obviously being falsebacks, they are playing as DMs anyway, so they're naturally central. So there's lots of opportunities for you to then switch into them, or the AI will do it, and you can then quickly put on that pressure, so you can, you know, double man press, bring your centre back up, nick the ball there, just pressure them with the fullbacks, the falsebacks. What I would say as well, typically, I know I mentioned earlier that Lahm was sort of the poster boy, and he was sort of the first guy that, in the modern era anyway, that was a falseback, or that popularised it anyway. And he was quite slow, but typically, you know, at least with FIFA and players that you'll be using, your fullbacks will be fast because you've got to deal with those tricky wingers. So they're sprinting back. You know, you're thinking what, 90 plus pace. I think Hakimi might have 89. I don't know. But Mendes definitely has 93 or whatever it is. So these guys, if you think AI is dragging them back, they're around 90 pace. So they're really fast to get back into position and then if you're trying to pressure opponents with them for a little bit before they drop back into position, you're running around with like 90 plus pace, good defending players anyway. So quite handy to have them in there. It doesn't happen as much now because I think there's been a patch, but it would be a case where they would sort of get caught the other side of the centre back. Like whilst they're transitioning, the centre back would go wider and they would come centrally, and then you'd have this really awkward crossover where like an opponent would be trying to break on you, and they would be trying to get back into their, you know, each trying to get back into their own position, and you could sometimes get caught there. It doesn't happen as much now thanks to this, whatever patch it was. I don't know, I stopped playing for a while, but yeah, just be wary of that if that ever happens in the future, because that was really frustrating. If you like me for some reason, stick around. If you like some of the goals, cool, let me know. Okay.